Hey everybody, we are officially live. I'm so excited to dive into another pre-symposium panel. The pre-symposium panel is the lead up to our executive symposium, which is tomorrow, August 7th, in Austin, Texas, at Ferrari of Austin, where we will be discussing implementing meaningful change within your organization. So, what is a pre-symposium panel? A pre-symposium panel is a gathering of leaders who are going to be at the event, sharing their thoughts, their insights, their experiences, their mistakes sometimes when it comes to the topic, that being implementing meaningful change within your organization. So we've got three great leaders who are going to be at the event tomorrow that I have here that we're featuring to share their thoughts and insight on this topic. We've got John, we've got Sean, we've got Allison. John, do you mind introducing yourself?
I'm John Stanhope. I've been a director of engineering over the last few years, leading software teams, building games and real money gambling and sports betting.
Very nice. Sean, how about you?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name's Sean. Most recently, I've been the director of talent for a tech-based startup, mostly focused on public sector. So going out to consult federal agencies on different services and things we access as citizens and non-citizens.
Very cool. And Allison, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm an executive at a utility company, focusing on the administration and HR side. I've been doing this for well over 10 plus years, and I'm so happy to be part of this panel.
Very nice. And I'm Garrett Mintz. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. At Ambition in Motion, our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they're there, their expectations meet reality, and when they come home, they feel fulfilled. And we believe that starts with leaders because leaders create the experiences employees have while at work. And so we create technologies and communities to empower leaders to be their best selves for their teams. And one of the ways that we build community is we bring together executives for our executive symposiums. So let's dive in. Topic for today, implementing meaningful change within your organization. So I want to really focus here on how do we go about really when we get, especially we all are senior leaders within our respective organizations, but sometimes there are decisions that are made that are maybe not in our control, and maybe we don't necessarily agree with the new direction of where things are going. How do we go about getting ourselves to buy into a new change that's been put on us and then be able to communicate that to our teams in a way that actually gets them to buy into this new change going on? Because I think that's one of the biggest things that I see is like the biggest pitfall to most change initiatives is you've got a senior executive at the top, maybe pressured by the board to implement some form of change in the organization, and then they've come down and says, I have come down on Mount High and decreed that we are making this change in our organization. And everyone's like, what the heck is going on? Why? Everything seems to be going good. What are we changing for? But there may be some insights that maybe we're not privy to, or that maybe there are some goals that we didn't hit. And even though we were profitable, we weren't profitable enough. Whatever it may be, we might be getting some new change initiatives that maybe we weren't prepared for. How do we go about getting ourselves to buy into some of these new change initiatives and getting our subsequent teams to buy into some of these new change initiatives? I'd be curious, who wants to go first?
I'll start. Um, so I'll start from the HR side, right? It's always about the people. So I'll start. For me, it's about the alignment. I think one, you have to, so whatever initiatives come down, you have to align it with how it works within your organization. So that can be from a KPI, that can be from any objectives, goals that you may have for that year that you're working on. If you can create an alignment, you can get some movement from that direction, as well as then you empower and you create your management group and your mid-level group as your change agents. Because a leader can only lead so far, but if they can have the middle group that is more connected day to day with that team and those employees, they can push that. They can push whatever those change or initiatives through that group a little bit faster than trying to be the only person leading the change. They now have other people throughout the organization with the buy-in, helping promote any change initiatives that you're trying to push. And that's for all levels, regardless of where it's coming from.
Yeah, I think the important part is, the alignment part of trying to find a way to make sure that you can, whatever the change is, kind of get your team to understand what means to them and how does it align with what you've been previously doing, and try to encourage or find um, I don't know, the right balance with what they've been doing in the past, if it's a big change, things like that. And then I think it's also important to have a forum for you to be able to discuss it with the leader doing the change so that you can really understand it and understand where it's coming from. And, if you even if you have a disagreement with it, having a good opportunity to discuss that and hopefully have also be convinced of its change or its value or some aspect of it.
Yeah, I'll add, John, you have two HR people, HR and talent people with you right now. So it'll be interesting to get a mix of engineering perspectives versus ours. Not that we're out for each other over here, but I would say the change that I've seen both kind of fail, because Garrett, what you highlighted in my mind is like a reactive change, like it's being pushed down, top down from some level of leadership or a board. There's not a lot of like push that maybe your directors or VPs have in making the change happen or like changing what was proposed. So they have to be able to tell the story, in my mind, to your community of people. Why is this happening? Why, as transparent as possible, why are we here? What does the end state look like, and how does this impact you as the worker or the community that's helping drive whatever mission or thing the team is developing? Um, I've also found that trying to get like what I would call some type of council, Allison, you hit on it too, like a group of people that's helping champion the change, but making sure that group of people is also has a voice in developing whatever you're putting together. So if you don't get your community or at least a component of them involved in developing, say, for example, like project plans, communication campaigns that go out, they just don't feel part of what's happening, and then it's completely disconnected. And I have also found that usually your most vocal members of your community are sometimes the most helpful, and you want to bring in their voices, even though sometimes they're the most difficult to deal with. Because if you get them not necessarily on your side, but if you get their voices and their ideas brought in, they'll 100% usually be some level of like a champion behind what you're trying to do. So those are the only pieces that I would add.
I really like all these points that really come together quite nicely. Allison, you talk about alignment, KPIs, empowering middle managers as change agents. John, you talk about, finding a way to make connections between the previous work and the new work. And Sean, you talk about, if there is a reactive change, really making sure that everybody knows the why and can explain the what's in it for the individuals on the ground level doing the implementing the change. I'm gonna start with John a little bit, but it's gonna be a blend of like everybody's here. But one of the things that I'll often see happen, especially in this reactive change type of mindset, and especially when technology is proliferating and like AI, outsourcing, let's do this, ping pong, boom, bing. You got new things going on. We've got shiny object syndrome. We got squirrel. Like we're just jumping out at the next thing. It becomes very frustrating, and especially from a technical perspective, when the work that you've been maybe working on for the last 6 months, your boss or your executive team comes to you and says, yeah, so you've been working on this one thing. We won't want to work on that anymore. We want you to stop everything and work on something new. And you're like, great, we'll just take all of our progress and just dump it right in the trash. And that stings. And it eventually, I would imagine it builds up apathy. How do you go about reinvigorating yourself when you get that? And I only give that example because I see it happening more and more, especially over the last couple of years. Like I feel like it's happening more and more lately than it has previously.
I think it's important to try with that new thing to find something new in it, like something to learn from and build from. Potentially find stuff you've learned in the past and what can you apply to this new thing. I think those are important ways when you get something brand new and you're leaving something behind. I think there's also, if there's other opportunities to make changes along with it to kind of bring people along that maybe are more career focused for them as well, so they're not so focused on, oh hey, this previous work is being sidelined and now we have a new thing. Along with that, finding other mechanisms to grow people's career and keep them focused on the future as opposed to kind of looking back and lamenting the past.
Sean, Allison, anything to add to that? Like, especially if you're communicating to somebody like, hey, I know you've been working really hard on this one thing. We need you to stop that and work on something new.
Allison, you're on mute if you
Unmuting myself. Sometimes it's about also about the purpose as well, right? We may need to shift, and I always talk about pivoting, right? They probably hate that word. It's probably overused, but pivoting sometimes helps us see the big picture, and being able to align it with purpose and the reason, and also getting making the connection. I think John and Sean both have, we've all kind of hit in that alignment, that showing them how it connects to the next big thing that we're working on, and then having the passion yourself. So you've got to sell it because you become the sell agent. So if they see that you believe in it and that you're driven and they've got trust in you, typically they're going to follow. So I think purpose becomes a big key in any change initiative, even if they've been working on something for a long time and you're asking them to pivot on something different. If you can find the purpose in why you're doing it, I think you get a lot of buy-in and you get a lot of movement that direction.
So on that point, the thing I wrote down like with big underlines under it was what role does vulnerability play in communicating change? And when I say vulnerability, I mean vulnerability of the business because it can be easy for us to get stuck in our own myopathy of just like, we've been working on this thing for the last 6 months. What the heck is going on here? And I don't know. I think if you're an executive implementing a change in how somebody works in the direction that you're going in the business, if you can say, hey, we've been doing a competitive analysis as to what is going on in the market. We're looking at what our competitors are doing. We look at what their prices are at, and we look at how things are going from a market perspective. And we believe that this technology we thought was going to be a really big hit and a really big innovation. Unfortunately, we think we're woefully falling behind in these other areas. And if we are not on top of these areas, we might become the next blockbuster and we end up becoming losing our viability in the marketplace moving forward. And so yes, I recognize you're working on this new technology or this new thing. We want you to put this on hold to focus on this new area because if we're not able to be successful in this area, I don't know what our longevity looks like as a business moving forward. I think if you were to communicate like that, that would be a pretty compelling message. You'd be like, okay, you know what? That's a good message. I guess I've been working on this thing for the last 6 months, but it's not about me. It's about like the fact that I can keep my job and work at this organization moving forward because like if we're not able to stay competitive as a business, then nobody's got jobs. I don't know.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on that?
the challenge with that, though, I mean, I think that's great. Like, it's really important that companies convey that. It just is. I think it's important. I don't know how you find the balance between that and going, okay, why do we trust you on this next one? Like, if the last thing was really valuable, and now this isn't. This is the new now valuable thing. Okay, like, is there going to be another new thing in 3 months? I think that's one of the challenges in trying to balance that kind of change.
Great point. Yeah, Sean, jump in.
I think, John, like I've definitely seen that, like working with teams like engineers, product managers, designers, where they're working towards like an end state product, and maybe they're ready to even ship whatever they built, and then they're halted. Something happened, and being able to communicate to those teams what the halt was, why it happened, and how we have to maybe reprioritize, and maybe it's just the next iteration of whatever they were developing. But what I have tried to do is kind of reiterate that what they've built or what they've worked towards is not necessarily the end all be all, even if that team of people won't be delivering that product in a couple months. But now they've kind of laid the groundwork for the next team to come in. Because usually, at least in my organization, we haven't kind of like wiped it all and scrapped it completely, but we've just put it on the another shelf for another period of time. So that team has kind of made it easier for the next iteration of people to come in and make it happen. Or maybe sometimes the organization they were working for, the client, customer, whatever we want to call these groups of people, maybe they weren't actually ready for what they thought they wanted, and they weren't mature enough in whatever it is that was needed to get to the end goal. And sometimes it's not always on the business, it's on the customer sometimes too. Maybe they're not ready to take ownership. So again, laying kind of like the planting the seed maybe for like the next team to come grow it. Um, and that's how I've tried to like inspire teams to keep moving forward in times where it seems like it's never going to get any better.
Yeah, I think important part too is the balance. If if you have a leadership team that is so focused on delivery only as the only thing that indicates value, then when deliveries get, disappeared like that or shunted to the side, it's really hard to maintain forward momentum. You need to have a balance of, well, we care about deliveries, but we also care about your growth. Remember, you worked on that for 6 months and you did learn stuff. Now, whether we ship it or not, you've still gained value by working on it. You've invested in yourself, you invested in the company. But if the message is more focused on just delivery, 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 and not cultural growth or career growth, I think those kinds of pivots land hard.
But that's also where, as people that are leading the change, communication becomes really key, right? Being able to understand and read the target audience that you're dealing with and knowing all of the historical references when you try to implement change. Because again, we become show people, right? At the beginning, we're leading, they're watching, they're following us. So it's how do we craft that message? So it's not that this isn't the next best and brightest idea that we've had, but this is how it's going to continue to help us to leap forward. So crafting it in the right way. So all of the work that they've done wasn't done in vain. It's still valuable. And John, you hit on that. But it's just about using the right words, using the key words to continue to inspire and to motivate and to keep them intrigued on whatever it is that the changes that you're trying to push forward. So sometimes we forget about that. That communication is really key in using the right words at the right time with the right individuals, because they linger on what we say and they're watching what we do. So I think drafting the communication plan in advance, knowing and having an effective person leading that change, because if they may be just good at what they do, but their communication doesn't impact and doesn't gain the interest in all that you're trying to lead, any change is going to be in vain if you don't have the right person with the right communication skills.
Yeah, I think, the casual sentiment is everyone is supportive for change until it happens to them. Then in which case nobody wants any change to happen. Like for your, business transformation, you go do what you need to do. Just as long as it doesn't touch me or impact me at all, I don't really care. Y'all can do whatever the heck you want to do over there. I don't mind it. The moment it touches me, then we got problems.
Yeah.
But John, you bring up this really, really great point. Why should I, as an employee, trust this new thing, even if you were vulnerable, even if you said, hey, I don't know if the viability of our business is going to be able to sustain if we're not able to invest in this new area, this new technology, whatever it may be. And so the question I have is, what would a team member need to see or to know to feel like this is right, this was the right decision? Like, how do we empower our people with data and information to say like, okay, cool, I see the data you shared and I have come to the same conclusion as you. Now granted, I know that might take a long time to do, especially when we're talking about hundreds or thousands of employees, but I don't know, what are your thoughts? Like what do they need to see to
I
feel
think it's important to have a compelling vision of whatever the change is, where is it going? Like it can't be because it's just going to be today we were going left and now we're going right. Why are we going right? And that long-term vision, we're going to go right for the next 6 months or 12 months, have some sort of time frame in it. And I think having milestones that you can go back to and refer to is like, okay, we're on this path and we've gotten 25% of the way there, and this is what we said was going to happen, and this is what happened. And if we're having to make adjustments, we're making the adjustments as we're going. So I think having that, laying that out so you can so to some degree rebuild the trust in that you've got the right plan. You've got a plan, I think is the first part. And then you're executing on it well and you're making adjustments. I think everyone recognizes no one knows what the future is. but making sure that you're keeping an eye, looking out for the future, but making adjustments as you get there, and you have a plan, a set of milestones to do it.
I would add to that too, Garrett, you mentioned like vulnerability. And I think if you have to divert and like go to a group of employees, project team, your whole workforce, whatever it may be, with a new plan or a new idea, like admitting maybe what went wrong from the leadership's end on like the first approach. Maybe it was a missed revenue. Maybe they misunderstood a client need or a cultural shift. Who knows what it may be, but like being vulnerable in that, hey, I'm going to take ownership that this was like a blind spot on my end. And then here's how we're going to fix this. Here's the bigger vision. Here's where we want to go. Here's the end state of the new change. What do you all think about this? And, it could be as simple if it's a project team of collecting feedback and voices from that team and seeing like, hey, as the leader, I don't have all the answers. No one here has a crystal ball, but what are you all thinking about this approach and how do we get there? If it's a community-based change, a workforce change, can you do a larger survey and kind of get open feedback on the idea to form some type of council, which we talked about earlier, a group of employees to help move the change forward? So in my perspective too, it's about like getting feedback and bringing people into the change, even when you don't have a lot of time when you're working on like that reactive versus proactive change.
But okay, not to play devil's advocate, I'll play a little devil's advocate here. My concern with doing a like organization-wide survey as to the direction we go or why we're going in a direction or how do you feel about this change or whatever it may be is it feels like that almost gives the false illusion of control. You know what I mean? Like when I say that, it's like if we ask employees for their perspective on some new change initiative that we're rolling out, and like 90% of employees don't like it, but we're like, we're doing it anyways. Well, that's sending out the survey was it seems almost moot and almost like I don't know, spit in the face almost. I don't know. Does that that's me playing devil's advocate. I don't know.
No, no, I love that. I think that's true. And from what we've seen or what I've seen, people, it's like the connotation, do people really resist change or do they resist the unknown and not having a voice in it? So if you're releasing some type of survey or like feedback mechanism, is your communication tooling, your communication campaigns, your messaging, is it telling the full story so people understand like what's in it for them at the end? How does it impact them? So then they're not simply just resisting the simplicity of change. Maybe they'd have a greater sense of what's known and where you're going, and maybe they could provide more productive feedback and partner with you in carrying out whatever it is you're trying to do.
Are y'all fans of tiger teams or like experimental teams that go out and try? Because I think like a lot of ideas, there's like a pre-bake, currently baking, and the bread's out the oven type of process when it comes to implementing change. And it's like if you have an idea, like an inkling, like a twinkle in your eye, like maybe this could be a really cool thing. You don't want to have the whole organization change to this because like it may not work. It's yeah, it's an idea, but I like to have a pilot team that can try some things out. What are your thoughts on pilot teams, or sometimes people call them tiger teams? I don't really care what you call them, but what are your thoughts on that process when it comes to creating a change initiative? And if you like them, how do you identify those people that are ideal for these pilot teams?
Well, I haven't seen that have a great success to me. I mean, I think the Tiger team almost usually seems like it's set up for some sort of crisis generally. Um, Change through crisis isn't always the great way to do it. Like I would prefer that to be planned out. And I don't know. I feel like you'd have to have an incredibly good message and a very clear outcome that then you can, share with the wider group that look at how we did this change in this team and it worked well. Um, that's just a tough one, right? Because everyone else is still just as hard on whatever other non-change thing, right? And they're just going to hear, oh, look, they guys went off, and 6 months later, we got this out of it. Special case or whatever. I don't know. I haven't had a lot of seen a lot of good things coming out of tiger teams or small teams sort of created in response to something.
Any disagreement? Any?
I think I've seen it go both ways. The ones that have been successful has been you pick the right team. You pick the team that I think Sean alluded to earlier that has the biggest voice. Because if you pick that right team, and you pick the right team for the right project that you're trying to push, or the right change that you're trying to implement, uh, you can sit back and then it just kind of naturally and organically happens. So it's knowing the individuals that you're going to be utilizing to help with whatever that initiative is. So if you get that team that's quiet and nobody hears from them, then yeah, change is going to just kind of drop. But if you get that team that they're always out in the fore and they always have something to say, you might be onto something, because then they become your messenger, and they are showing because they want to be heard. So they're showing everybody how the success happened in whatever areas it may be. So I think it's about picking the right people, picking the right team to help you with that change initiative.
And I would add, it depends too on like the what you are acting on, what you're delivering on. For talent and HR, typically our programs or projects that we're rolling out have direct impact to the workforce. So it's super important to get feedback early and often on what we're designing and like coming up as a concept and what the end state of whatever that thing is. For example, if an HR team is rolling out a new performance management program, we would want to bring in employees from different areas of the organization to get feedback on what that policy looks like and what the performance criteria generally look like, what the ratings look like, what the process is. Because that is a major change, but it's also a major one that impacts your entire organization, top down. So that is one for me where I have seen success directly is getting people brought in early and often in some type of tiger team. We call them councils, group of employees, employee groups, all similar things. John, realize maybe your perspective is different on like project teams and change on projects, but in my mind, when you're rolling out things that impact the humans of your workforce, it's super helpful to get their buy-in and their feedback.
Good. I like that. That's some good. That's some healthy disagreement. That's good. John, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's true with those things. My experience hasn't been that that's worked extremely well in things, at least in terms of the kinds of changes I've seen attempted through that mechanism. That is quite often a very reactive to form a tiger team, and then wherever they go off, like the amount of PR or communication they have outwards, it's not really clear to the rest of the organization what's going on, and it usually ends up being kind of lost in the shuffle.
How do you handle scenarios when you know you're about to you know you've been tasked with doing something that you know kind of in your heart is a crappy thing, but like you have to do it. Like we can talk about the big O outsourcing and you're like, "Oh, we just brought on a, technology team in India. They're just helping out to support us as like we figure out some of our technology stuff." And it's like, "Oh, we've added a little more headcount in India." And then all of a sudden it's like, actually, you know what? We're gonna get rid of our domestic team and we fully outsourced our product and technology team to India or wherever. It doesn't really matter. Um, and I guess like when you're in a scenario where you're leading through a situation that, like, how do you act? How do you balance the scarcity mentality of like, whoa, what's going on here? Should I be looking for a job? Should I be beefing up my resume? Should I be like keeping an eye out for things? Um, with actual productive work. Does that make sense? Like, because I think like as a company, as an organization, we would like for everybody to be fully focused on the work itself and not focused on beefing up the resume because all the time thinking about interviewing for jobs, beefing up the resume, doing all the things is time not spent actually working on the job itself. Um, but it is kind of like it seems like the right thing to do to like give somebody a little bit of like forewarning, like, hey, a change might be mounting in the future, and like maybe prepare yourself. Like maybe don't go out and buy that new vehicle, or maybe that Ford F-150 with all the custom things on the truck might not be the right purchase at this juncture. Like I don't know. How do you leave when you know you've got something really hard to do, but you need everybody to kind of stay productive until a certain point? Does that question make sense? Is that relatable at all? I don't know.
Yeah, it's relatable, and I've had ones not that were like cliffs like that per se, but they are really tough. I don't know. I don't think I've ever done a good job with it. It's one of those things that I think over my career, I've now become pretty much um, resolved to this job is probably not the right job for me if I'm being asked to do something to the team that I don't think is the right choice or not good for them, that potentially the business has decided to, um, push their cost savings, whatever, above growing, you're not even growing the team, but leveraging the team or investing in them. Um, so going through those is they're just tough. Like it's trying to focus on whatever's the next thing to get done, to focus on beefing up other skills. Like, hey, we should, try to learn more other technologies, so that people find ways to invest in the employees without it being clearly obvious. Because if you do, leak that's bad, right? You can't do that. So you have to find ways to motivate people or encourage them to grow in their career um, while that's going on or pending.
And typically, at the level that we all are, there's just information that just can't be shared at times because it impacts the business overall. So crafting the messaging, being able to bring people together and be as transparent as you can. And sometimes it's not about we're going to open up a new division, XYZ, and this division may be dissolved, but more of, hey, we're going through some changes. And when you continue to talk in that line, when you've got an intellectual work group, they get it. They're not going to go get that home. They're not going to go and invest in all of these things because you've already mentioned that the company is making some pivots, we're making some changes, and we're looking at different things. And, stability for all of us will be around XYZ timeline. And I think then you have given them enough information, but you can retain the workforce you have. You can keep them motivated in doing the things that they're doing. So the company can get to the point where whatever the decision is or whatever the move is, that it can come to light when it's needed to from the business sense. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that I would love to share with a lot of people that I just can't do. But just being able to craft that and do it where I continue to keep my respect at the end of the day. So when the light comes out, they still respect me, but they understand also the position that I am in, that what I had to do was based on the business because, yeah, that's kind of what my role is at the end of the day.
I don't have a straightforward answer to this one, Garrett. This is definitely a hard question, so thanks for asking it for us. Because it's superhuman and one that impacts the people that we would work alongside and perhaps our peers and ourselves. But what I've seen fail on the opposite end of it, and Allison, you were hitting on this too, is like when an organization or people over communicate and basically invoke chaos in the workforce. And they kind of bring the project members or the community too far along on the journey and share details too early, where the course changes drastically and maybe it changes for the better. And they're bringing that team of people on like the up and down rather than going back in an organized way with more clear communication that is still very honest and transparent because you don't want to overshare and invoke chaos. And Allison, as you mentioned, like then lose people when you don't need to. But you also want to share enough information to signal to them that we are all human here and we'll need to probably make choices that are best for ourselves and those that we hold close. Um, so not an answer to your question, but just some general thoughts that came out.
No, I like that, Sean. That's I like that you brought up like what is the right amount of transparency around change. And I think that makes a lot of sense because if you get people to hit the panic button, uh yeah, I mean that's the context. That's the hardest thing. Like I've seen this with organizations that practice open book management, where they've got the books are open, everyone can see them, everyone can see the finances, and that seems cool. But the thing that it lacks is context. So let's say you got three down quarters in a row. As a casual observer, I might think, okay, maybe I don't get my Christmas bonus this year. What I may not realize is that contextually, three down quarters means we're laying off some portion of this team. You're like, whoa, that still comes as a shock. So the context around the communication and transparency, I think, is really, really critical. But also to your point, you don't want to incite panic. I've kind of hit this question, but maybe just the like Reddit. Any tips about, I don't know, what is the right amount of transparency? How do you, yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one. It's not easy, but something we have to do, especially as more and more things change, is effectively cater our message around what people need to know and when.
What,
No easy answer from that one.
Sorry, that's like
so
I'm asking an impossible question. It's just like really like these are the things that I think all of us want to know, and that's why we have these discussions, and that's why we have these pre-symposium panels, and we bring these people together because I want to bring people together to say like we found this to be effective, or we found that
I
to be.
guess most of my experience has been seeing things being played cards pretty close to the chest. I would love to see what it's like to see a more transparent. I've not been involved in a company that did incredibly transparent, despite having um, very even senior people, right? I'd say depends on also your staff, right? If you've got a lot of junior people, you probably have to be a little more careful about it. They're gonna might be more likely to get worked up. But if you have people that are 10 and 20 years experience across multiple jobs, I think you can be more transparent with them. Now, what that means in terms of a broader message is trickier because sharing it asymmetrically across the organization will probably create other friction. It'll come up in some meeting or someone will make an offhand remark, and now you've messed it up. So I can appreciate from an HR perspective, the goal is limit it to as much as possible. From my perspective, having people as much information as possible as how to make decisions about their own lives and about how they work for a company and how the company is moving, I would try to lean towards sharing a little more and see how that goes. Now, like I said, I've not really seen it, so that could really blow up in your face fast.
So we went through a major change maybe about 5 years ago where our company was uh, up for sale. So we went through an investor change. And that within itself is scary, where you potentially lose individuals. And we chose the vulnerability side, where we shared as much as we could based off of what we knew ourselves. Because you don't know who the buyers will be and what they will do with the company when they also come in and become the majority ownership. So we chose to do it where we were vulnerable and just said, we don't know what we don't know, but we know what we have. We have a good product. And if we all stay accountable and doing the things that we're doing to keep our company in a position where people are interested in purchasing us, it's difficult for them to want to dissolve what they have. And that was a message because we knew our audience, we knew our employees, but we also knew potentially some of the investors that would have an interest in us and what we ourselves, how we had set ourselves apart from other people. So we knew we had something special. So we could be as open as we could based off of the information that we had. And we did it very often. And we did not hide. If we didn't have the answer, we don't have the answer right now. And we were able to keep our workforce where we did not lose our workforce. And we're all still here and excited that we went through that change because the new buyers came in and we became even more successful than what we were, but we were able to keep it intact. We were able to keep our leadership intact, but they knew that we were sharing as much as we could and we were being as transparent as we could based off of the information that we knew ourselves. So there was that trust that they had in us. And it was the trust that they had that we weren't hiding anything from them. So I think it's more or less of knowing that workforce that you have, but also being okay to say what you don't know. Because if you don't know, then they feel comfortable when you've shared that with them that they don't know. So they don't see you running. So typically they stick around when they see leadership still in place.
Yeah, I think there's power in just saying you don't know. Like, I think that's a really, really powerful message. John, I've got one example of vulnerability in leading change and it working pretty well. I'll share it right now. So my best friend used to work for Uber back in the mid 2010s, like it was like 2015, 2016 time period. And I'm not actually like the biggest fan of their CEO at that time, but he did one thing that was really interesting. And he had gone to an investor meeting and his investor says, hey, we love the growth. We love the revenue growth, but your expenditure growth is growing at way too high of a pace compared to your revenues. And we are not going to fund you for your next round of funding unless you can shave off $100 million off your annual operating expenditures. Because ultimately you're spending way too much money. We got to be able to see some profitability here. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a ramp up period. We've hit this point where we got to start seeing some profitability. And so as opposed to trying to get with his C-suite team and come up with some grand elaborate solution on how they were going to slash off $100 million, he wrote out a memo to everybody at the organization. And he said, hey, everybody, I just met with our investors. We got an update. Our investors told us that they will not fund us for our next round of funding unless we're able to slash off $100 million off of our operating expenditures. I don't know how we're going to do that. I don't know how we're going to shave off that money. But y'all are incredibly bright. Y'all are incredibly capable. And I want to lean on you to help us get to this mark by 6 months from now. If we're not able to get to this outcome, we may not be able to exist as a business moving forward. And that totally rallied the troops. It encouraged people to be accountable. Like when, they would have lunches shipped in from, a catering company or whatever, and they would over order lunches oftentimes. People would used to take home maybe 10 or 20 lunches for the weekend or whatever. And people were like, hey, like, no, we can't do that anymore. Like that lunch is for you. We got to reduce our lunch ordering cost. Or, people would take like beer and bring them home for the weekend because they had beer in the office, conference room or whatever. And long story short, people started holding other people accountable because they wanted to keep their jobs. They had equity in the company. They wanted to see it succeed. And they did. They smashed their goal and they were able to obviously raise their money, and Uber's still thriving and kicking today.
That's a great example. Yeah, that's an amazing one.
Well, John, Sean, Allison, this has been a great pre-symposium panel. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here. I feel like we've covered some really, really interesting topics and some really meaty topics too around implementing change. So if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, I want to meet these three great leaders, come to the Executive Symposium tomorrow. I'll put the RSVP link in the comments of this video. But yeah, I'd love to see you there. And anyways, thank you all for being here. I appreciate your time and see you all tomorrow.